I don't know how to start a video while talking about an episode such as this one. That's why I usually make like small Sakuga mad segments to use as intros. But for this episode, I've already gotten carried away and made a whole Sakuga mad video. I guess I'll just immediately go through the pointers and then do the scene by scene breakdown. The pointers, of course, being the schedule, the staff list, and in this specific episode, I think it's very important to talk about how fans perceived this episode. And yeah, as usual, let's start with talking about the schedule. If you were wondering what would happen if the schedule got so bad that there's literally no lead time and the staff would just be forced to release whatever's been finished so far, yeah, you no longer have to wonder what that would look like. This is it. This is a straight up unfinished episode that was once again supposed to be made outside the production line of the other Jujutsu Kaisen episodes, but there's only so much you can do because this is again a Miso episode, right? Miso did the previous episode as well. Now we've already had entirely broken and unfinished episodes previously in the season as well, but episode 17's case is still unique among them because this episode is max priority, not just for the Jujutsu Kaisen project, not even just for TV anime. This episode is the biggest scale project that 2D animation as a whole can have. And you cannot expect these artists to tone down their ambition, have like a few still frames here and there such that they can release a more cohesive finished product instead of a lot of unfinished ideas. You cannot expect them to do that. Because these guys, they're not Team JJK. The team that made this episode is a group of really young, extremely talented, idiosyncratic animators. This is a team that is specifically brought into productions for the sake of making the highlight episode. And expecting them to tone down their ambition is very wrong and counterintuitive because these guys are in this position as highlight directors and animators because of the ambition that they have. It would be like me saying that I don't have enough time to make these videos, so I'm just gonna make daily videos like chibi reviews. Once again, I have to say that a production hell video for Jujutsu Kaisen is definitely coming. It's the first video on my priority list after Jujutsu Kaisen ends. Maybe I'll make the animation analysis for Shibuya Arc's opening first. Anyway, yes, since the production hell video is coming, I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about the production cycle of this episode or such. I will be mentioning that over there. Now let's get to the staff list. So for this week of debut Kaisen, we have Harumi Yamazaki. Now Harumi Yamazaki is a very new artist in the anime industry. They've worked on 6 IPs so far. Started off with key animation in My Hero Academia season 4. Then she was one of the highlight animators in One Direct Priority, if not the highlight animator, and that's an extremely big deal considering One Direct Priority had incredibly talented artists, but Harumi Yamazaki was still making the main highlights when it comes to action in the entirety of One Direct Priority, which is ridiculous coming out of such an incredibly new artist. As far as animation style and techniques go, it's very clear that Harumi takes a lot of inspiration from Yutaka Nakamura, and this episode marks the first storyboard and episode director credit for her. Now I do not exactly know when Harumi was brought into this project to work here as the episode director, that is. For all I know, she just probably did last minute processing for her segment, which is mostly the train fight sequence between Mahoraga and Sukuna. Now aside from her, there are 2 additional artists with the episode director and storyboard credit, and these guys you must be a lot more familiar with. It's Miso and Hakyugo. Imagine getting the duo of Miso and Hakyugo as directors for your mainstream shonen anime and screwing them over with a production condition so bad that they cannot realize their full ambition. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 was supposed to be a historic run. We were supposed to get a repeat of Mob Psycho Season 2 Episode 5 and then Mob Psycho Season 2 Episode 11, but in this case, back to back. So from what I understand, most of the battle sequences were in fact storyboarded by Hakyugo, whereas Miso, he took more like a chief episode director or chief storyboard artist role for this episode, while also filling in the gaps. Now talking about the animation directors, there are way too many to mention, but the one that stands out the most is once again Sota Yamazaki. His corrections are definitely the highlights drawing wise in this episode. Some of his corrections are also in chief animation director sheets, but he was only credited as animation director. At this point, I don't even think anyone understands what their role is. Now coming to the animator side of things, this is literally Power of Friendship, the episode. There are over 60, that is 60 key animators part of this episode, and they're not your run-of-the-mill, a random intern animator that's been pulled in and put into this episode to work on it. These are not just industry-leading animators, these are industry-leading directors who are working as animators in this episode. Now I'll just name my favorites from these group of people because of course I can't name all 60, but the clips that I'll show you when I'm calling out their specific names are most likely going to be scenes that they also directed and not just animated. So starting off with legendary animator Hisashi Mori, who's worked with Team Go on multiple occasions. Then we have Hone Hone, Burr Creek, Veilen Sang, Hiromatsu Shu, We also have Toru Iwasawa, Shun Enokido, and Takahito Sakozume. Toru Iwasawa has been the action director for every single action scene in Frieren so far. And the Enokido Sakozume duo is the busiest duo on this planet currently, working on Fate Strange Fake. Being the busiest people in the industry currently will not stop these people from working with their friends. Now, of course, we also have the Team Go regulars participating. We have Kazuto Arai, Takumise Nakohara, even Hironori Tanaka returned, not because this is the Jujutsu Kaisen project that he's been part of before, no, but instead because again he's just helping out Hakyugo, who he's worked with ever since Hakyugo's very first time as a director. As for Jujutsu Kaisen project's main animators, we have Kosuke Kato and Kaito Tomioka, and other Jujutsu Kaisen regulars as well like Takafumi Mitani, Daniel Kim, Jem, Dorian Kulon, Hayata Kurosaki. We also have celebrity foreign animators coming in like Kyuri Liu, Saucelot, and last but not the least, the Messiah, Vincent Chansard. It was my fucking dream to see Vincent animate in Jujutsu Kaisen. We got that. And we also got another one of my dreams, which was finally getting to see the return of Sato Lava animation. Yes, we got Sato Lava in this episode, but at what cost? At what cost? The same power of friendship also brought Totos back into the project. He helped out with episode 14, which was another completely broken episode, and now he's back because his friends require his help. The reason he's not a core component, just being that he's the character designer and chief animation director of Chainsaw Man, and is most likely extremely busy over there. By the way, the Doshuki Sato clip that you just saw was undimmed. I'm using it from the version of the episode provided by Clocks on Twitter. I'll provide the link in the description. Now I need to talk about the fans' perception of this episode. As usual for an episode with production conditions that are very nuanced, you will never get nuanced takes, you'll only get extreme takes. On one side, you got people saying that this episode was unfinished, and so was episode 16. And on the other side, you got people saying this episode is the best episode of Jujutsu Kaisen ever, even better than episode 16. Here's my take. I'm going to be as objective as possible because these are my favorite artists working on this episode. This episode is not a good episode. It is, however, a great episode and one of the greatest episodes in shonen history, but that does not make it a good episode. I know I said in my community post that this is my favorite Jujutsu Kaisen episode, but the more I watched it, the more the recency bias faded away. The more I watch something, usually the objective part of my brain kicks in. Now, some of you might say that's a bad thing. No, I watched episode 9 of Vinland Saga season 2 fucking 20 times at this point, and I've only liked it more every time. Same with episode 16 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is virtually perfect in every way. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for this episode. The more I watched it, the more I noticed the continuity errors, the more I notice all the lost potential, the more I notice how incoherent and incomplete what we got to see is. There are people saying that this is much better than episode 16, which is just an objectively wrong statement. And the main reason I feel like people have this take is just because of what Hakyugo storyboards do to the mind of the average Sakuga fan. Hakyugo storyboards are just straight up drugs in animated form. While someone like Miso focuses on moment-to-moment excellence to make a perfectly animated and directed product, Hakyugo focuses on surrealism, pushing the animated medium to its creative limit. And when it gets to that level, when it gets so close to the limit, it is difficult to distinguish whether it is a complete product that the director intended to be this way, or if it is just actually unfinished, because there have been both takes. When the Fate Apocrypha episode aired, many people accused it of being CGI and unfinished animation, which was absolutely not the case. And now that this episode has aired, a lot of people are confusing the unfinished components of animation as artistic intent. From a production point of view, I think I said way back in one of my videos that one of these Jujutsu Kaisen episodes is just going to be a repeat of Black Clover 63. And yes, this was that episode. And just like what happened in that case with people not understanding or sometimes confusing artistic intent and unfinished animation, or vice versa, you had people comparing the Black Clover fight to Naruto vs. Pain when they couldn't be further apart in terms of the way they were produced. Same here, right? I compared Jujutsu Kaisen 16's production to Naruto Shippuden episode 167. A few artists given ample time to bring their vision to life and creating an artistic masterpiece. And now episode 17 is very close to Black Clover 63 in terms of production. Now it's not identical in the production circumstances. For Black Clover, they were doomed from the beginning. They simply did not have the resources available to make a high-profile episode because they did not have an animation producer who's supposed to handle the resources side of things. Episode 63 of Black Clover was Tatsuya Yoshihara giving the middle finger to the production committee of Black Clover, saying that yes, I can bring in my own friends, and even with zero resources available, I can make a Sakuga Kai episode. For Jujutsu Kaisen, you have an animation producer, right? You got Keisuke Seshimo, one of the best animation producers in the industry currently. I don't know if he's still part of Jujutsu Kaisen because because Shunsuke Okubo did say that the production committee has abandoned the project. But the point is, JJK's production committee put incredibly talented people like Miso and Hakyugo in the lead roles for highlight episodes. Black Clover just simply did not have artists to work with. It was all done by Tatsuya Yoshihara. Jujutsu Kaisen's production committee specifically brought in the best directors and animators for this episode and put them in a position where they would fail. Now that is what I call the worst management I have ever seen in an animated project. Ever. Overall, the quality of JJK 17, I would say, is still higher than Black Clover episode 63. Mostly has to do with the quality of the drawings. I wouldn't say JJK episode 17 has incredible drawing quality or anything, but because of the strength of the animation directors and because MAPPA runs a sweatshop of second key animators, it simply has better drawings than Black Clover 63, where I don't think most drawings made past the layout phase. Talking about the other elements, again, this Jujutsu Kaisen episode is one of the worst in terms of art direction. Most of the backgrounds just look like low resolution filtered photographs because there is no time to paint backgrounds. Comparing this to the art direction of episode 16, there is such a big quality whiplash that it's insane to think that both of these are from the same show. But it's somehow still better than the comp and background art in the Black Clover episode, where it was literally just placeholder assets used for digital effects and background art. Black Clover, however, is superior in terms of scene consistency and editing. That, of course, mostly has to do with Tatsuya Yoshihara being the sole director. It is going to be more consistent than Jujutsu Kaisen, which had 3 directors all doing their own thing. Ultimately, Black Clover was a superior adaptation of the manga content. It adapted all the portions of the manga that it needed to adapt, while also finding areas like Isutameister's segment where they enhanced the source material. I cannot say the same for Jujutsu Kaisen episode 17. I read the source material portion of this episode. It's just 2 different things. This episode is not beating the Sakuga Mad allegations. It is what you would get if you brought the biggest and the most talented artists in the industry, have them just animate random shit, put it into a meat grinder, and then just pick it up and stuff it into 20 minutes of content. It is just random clips of high quality animation stuffed into 20 minutes of content with a complete disregard to consistency. Oh, Weilin Zhang's scene is unfinished? What do? You just take this Vincent Chan's art cut, which is actually finished, but there's nowhere to actually fit this scene in, so you just cut it by half and use the drop kick portion without any anticipation and then put it right after Weilin Zhang's scene. But it's actually supposed to end with Mahoraga throwing a building. How do you show that? We'll show a still image of a building with some light streaks, then just fade to black, and then cut to Vincent Sansard's scene again of Mahoraga throwing a building. How about the airplane segment? How did Mahoraga get up there and how did Sukuna get up there? For that, there's no answer. There's not even an attempt to hide the consistency error there because they just have nothing. The staff have nothing. They tried their absolute level best to salvage a completely broken episode. It's a failure in terms of execution, but it's still a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So many people love it, including me, because of the sheer level of ambition at display. You just never expect 2D animation to be warped to this level of surrealness, and you're just sitting there appreciating how adamant Hakyugo is with his necessity to one-up himself every time he puts something on screen. And it's not all bad, of course. You get the industry's best artist to work on an episode, it's obviously going to have peaks of 2D animation, and that's true here. Honehone, Verkreek, Weilin Zhang, Kyuri Liu, Hironori Tanaka, Takumisu Nakohara, and Saw Slot were able to put out incredibly high-quality animation that is some of the best that the medium has ever seen. Then, of course, we had the Vincent, who was chansarding non-stop. It should not be possible for one person to be this good. But here we are. If any of what I said came off as me shitting on the staff, that is absolutely not the intention whatsoever. I'm nothing but massive amounts of respect for everyone involved in this episode and the project as a whole. These are my favorite artists. After all, I'm not very big on celebrity obsession whatsoever. I don't consider any person above me. Even disliking this kind of fan culture, I am hypocritical in the sense that I go absolute fanboy mode when it comes to animators. These are my favorite group of people. Period. But I do not think that that is a valid excuse for me to just not have any criticisms for this episode at all. That's just a very boring way of going about things and would just not help the overall discourse and not help with educating people about animation and production conditions. Also, it would be a massive insult to all these incredible artists to say that this is the best they can do, when in reality, they can do much fucking better if conditions were at least a little bit humane. And while Miso did say that even with an extra 3 months of production time, they still might not have been able to reach the full scope of their ambition that they had for this episode, but having a schedule worse than your average high school project is obviously not gonna help. There's also this fucking 30% completion thing floating around. Shonen fans have this fucking obsession when it comes to power scaling. So Russia did the terrible mistake of giving them a solid number to work with. Even though even I would say that, yeah, this episode is only around 30% of what the staff is truly capable of, but it's not supposed to be taken like fucking literally. There's so much nuance that goes into anime productions. As Miso said, this episode is just a scene-by-scene completion job. No one has any fucking idea of what the final product will look like. So please, don't actually use that fucking number literally. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, as terrible as the production is, or well, because of that, is a goldmine of production information. It is amazing at educating the average person when it comes to production conditions and the artists behind the production. Misinformation is the last fucking thing we need. And I'm trying my best to utilize this resource that is Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 to educate you as best as possible. Are these drawings low detail or still frames because they are unfinished? No. That's because of artistic intent. Is the zoom in into Yuji's legs here because of artistic intent? No. The scene is unfinished. And eventually, you will get to the point where you'll be able to tell the difference as well. While knowledge could sometimes be a double-edged sword because you'll end up looking at all pieces of art critically, one of the edges are definitely sharper than the other one because it will only make you appreciate perfect forms of art even more. Like my love for episode 16 has only skyrocketed since my first time watching it. I wish I could make another fucking video of animation analysis on the same goddamn episode because of how much more I've started to appreciate that episode. The same episode that a lot of uninformed people think is unfinished. Anyway, let's just get into the scene-by-scene breakdown now. Alright, so since there are 60 artists compressed into 20 minutes of content, that's like pretty much Sakuga from start to finish. And you're going at the rate of 3 animators per minute. So I might end up missing out the name for some artists, so I'm already apologizing for that. If I end up leaving out some artist's name, that's just human error on my part, not because I have something personal against them, unlike a certain someone else. Honehone, Sugita, Vincent, Okura, and more. Yamashita, Nakamura, Tanaka, Watanabe, and more. I wonder if there's a particular artist who worked on both of these scenes that's being left out on purpose. So the very first scene, there's already some cool stuff going on. That's a very nice shorthand drawing of Yuji. And the next cut is this drawing. This drawing is like the perfect in-between, I would say, for Season 1 and Season 2. It has a little bit of the Tadashi Hiramatsuisms from the character design. That is like the way Yuji's forehead is pointy here, the nose, the lips, the chin, all look like they are trying to be faithful to Hiramatsu's designs. But there's a lot of Season 2 influence here as well with artistic freedom. In this case, the drawing just being Kagenashi. It's not Zenkage, not entirely devoid of shadows. It still has highlights, but it does not have as much highlighting as Season 1 did. If this was Season 1, there would be hatching or some sort of highlights underneath all of these layers of Yuji's hoodie, which is just absent here. Also, the color design and the comp, everything here is like a much more refined version of Season 1. This is what Season 1 was trying to look like. And cut to Sukuna, that's just so cool. The only real difference between the way the two of them are drawn is just that Sukuna has slightly thinner eyes. That's usually how Sukuna is drawn. A little bit more thinner eyes than Yuji. Yuji has large puppy eyes, whereas Sukuna has like slantier, evil kind of eyes. And of course, the slicked back hair. The slicked back hair makes all the difference. It is a difference between Emiya and Shiro. Another thing you probably noticed already is that the switch to cinemascope aspect ratio. The entire episode is going to be cinemascope from here, which is something I don't think I've seen in TV anime yet. Of course, it makes sense when you look at the directors, Itsuki Tsuchigami and Hakyugo. They both used the wide aspect ratio many times in their project. But again, this is the most I've seen it being used even from them. There's some really nice subtle movements here with the character acting. It's the best they can do in this schedule, but it is also genuinely very good. And I'm assuming all these drawings look so good because of Sota Yamazaki being CAD. I love how powerful this hatching is over here, and the way the hatching is used to define the depth and shadows. Like, look at the lines over here. It's not only following the shape of Megumi's eyes, it's also going along the shadow of his hair over here. Also, the different directions that the line art is running in, following his nose, following his brow, following his forehead. It's all in different directions to specify that particular depth. This is line art being used to their max potential. It is the exact opposite of the digital lines used in Attack on Titan the final season. That kills the depth of the drawings because it's going in one direction and it's not following the natural volume that the drawings themselves have. In this case, the line art is following the natural volume. We go back to this here. I'm actually surprised that the old clan leader who also had the same powers as Gojo was not able to beat Mahoraga, because Gojo's technique sounds like the easiest counter to Mahoraga, really. Hollow purple is created because of the collisions of red and blue an infinite number of times. That is two different types of energy colliding infinite times. That sounds like the perfect counter to Mahoraga, and it's kind of the same way Sukuna killed Mahoraga. So I'm assuming this Gojo clan leader from the Heian era was only about as strong as Satoru Gojo before he became the honored ones, like Teen Gojo episode 1, 2, 3, because beating Mahoraga for Gojo sounds as easy as open your domain and then just use purple. As for the animation here though, I love this drawing, but it is very awkward the way they're just zooming into it. it's not an animated zoom. The camera is not pushing in, the camera is zooming in. And because of the zoom in, or the detail is just being spread across and the drawing just gets blurrier and less sharp because of that. It's the kind of shit that happens in the schedule. Same with the next shot as well. This entire rotation shot, this was animated by, I actually forgot the name, I'll check. So it's animated by Shun Miyakawa. It's a very cool idea, but of course it's entirely broken with the art direction. It's a very cool idea of just turning off the lights in the background, but the execution is pretty much dark patches being applied on top of a collage image of buildings. If you focus on that, it looks awkward, but hey, just focus on Megumi. But even if you do focus on Megumi, yeah, Megumi just completely breaks apart between all of these drawings here. Yeah, this is just a crazy amount of melt, but I still have to applaud the team again for the sheer level of ambition here. A slow rotation shot like this requires perfect coordination between the key animation team, the Doga team, and the art direction team. And in this episode's case, half of that is not even being done until the day the episode is set to air. So the fact that they still attempted something like this is fucking ridiculous. And honestly, it is better than just a still frame of Megumi there. It's like the background image is again just being turned off. The lights still remain and the stop signs with the street lights, they're also there. More Sota Yamazaki CAD over here. This is Zenkage. There's absolutely no shadow highlights whatsoever. Volume and perspective defined solely through line art and line placement, something that Sota Yamazaki excels at, as we saw from the previous episode as well. Also the fact that Sota Yamazaki was CAD for 2 of the most high-profile episodes in a row, it's exhausting to me thinking about how exhausted he might be. This close-up is again another completely unique drawing and it looks so goddamn good. It's the perfect zoom in to this shot. The placement of everything is in the same location, including the line art underneath Megumi's eyes, or that extensive line art, by the way, on the brow and underneath Megumi's eyes. They help to define just how tired he is. I mean, these look like eye bags over here. Megumi looks like Yuichiro Hayashi here. Love the Dutch angles over here, especially because it's not even a Dutch angle. They're standing on top of a sphere here. I'm pretty sure this is the meteor that Jogo used. So it's not actually a Dutch angle. They're just standing in a slanted way. So another very cool idea. And yeah, now we get to Hisashi Mori's work. Everything here is hand-drawn, of course, and what he's doing here is that he's animated multiple layers of lights that is looped. I don't know how many frames exactly. The lights are looped thrice, but the fact that there are so many lights, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this building kind of thing in the background as well, so that's 8 different layers of animation that he had to make a lot of drawings for so that they loop seamlessly. And in the next cut he's doing more of that. 3 different layers of looped animation here, plus these signs and the background here as well. Like with the building is also definitely drawn by him. The artwork looks exactly like Hisashi Mori's artwork. Now we get to this shot. It's another example of people confusing artistic intent and, well, the shot just being unfinished. You might think that this is unfinished with the way Megumi is drawn and with this just still images of all of these dogs and frogs appearing, but this is honestly like a perfect shot. This is just Hisashi Mori's artwork. A lot of people thought his work in episode 8 of Chainsaw Man was also unfinished, but no, that was just not the case. His work in Chainsaw Man just stood out like a sore thumb because Chainsaw Man just has very uniform artwork, but in a project like Jujutsu Kaisen where there's a lot of artistic freedom, especially doubling up with directors like Miso and Hakyugo who provide full creative freedom, yeah, that's when Hisashi Mori's work shines. I'm sure everything here is again drawn by Hisashi Mori. There's no need for any other assistance by anyone. Love the way the dogs and the frogs are drawn as well, using the darkness of the background to also act as shadows for these characters to define their volume. And then all of them disappear. Mahoraga just pops in the background. Another shot that I'm sure many people thought was awkward and unfinished, when in reality this is just Hisashi Mori's artwork. It does not even fucking melt. So his expression is changing here, and with the change in expression you can see the shadows moving accordingly across his face, and that does not melt whatsoever. So this is unironically very well finished artwork. It might just look awkward to people who don't understand Hisashi Mori's art. There's also a lot of effects particles here. It's very Kaneda-like effects shapes, and Hisashi Mori did start off as an animator who was inspired by Yoshinori Kaneda, so that kind of makes sense. Love the way Mahoraga's mouth appears here. It's just some black particles and then just suddenly opens its mouth. It's so fucking creepy. And everything here again, including the backgrounds, drawn by Hisashi Mori. Starting from the small Megumi over here, Mahoraga, the smoke effects, the particle effects, and the backgrounds, everything by Mori. And also the wires that were holding Mahoraga together. We get to see Hisashi Mori's shorthand drawing here. Again, this shot is fucking amazing. It's already an iconic shot. Yeah, that's just fucking incredible artwork. I love the volume on Mahoraga here. It is so good. There's so much detail here. It's a little bit blurred, unfortunately, because, you know, depth of field. But I mean, it still looks amazing. You can tell it looks amazing. That's good enough for me. I feel like it's done on purpose, that Megumi looks so much like Gojo over here. Gojo also wears a raised collar, and the way Megumi is drawn with the hair and the eye looks very much like Gojo over here. He's pretty much black-haired Gojo. And then boom, goes Megumi flying to the other side of the screen. The subtle character acting on the asshole over here already looks very high quality, and that's because of Kana Ito's draftsmanship. Like, look at the subtle movement of Megumi just sliding his head down, or the beautiful weight distribution on Mahoraga as he's just walking forwards. The way the asshole tumbles down, he loses balance. That's just absolutely gorgeous character acting. And the way the shadows are drawn on top of the twink, Mahoraga just coming on top of him. That sounds very wrong, but again, I'm sure there's going to be Rule 34 between Mahoraga and this guy. We are part of the most degenerate community after all. Yeah, Kana Ito's draftsmanship is also really good. I love these drawings. So those who are unfamiliar with Kana Ito, she is a character acting genius who started off with Witch Studios. Earlier this year, she was one of the highlight character acting animators on Tengoku Daimakyo, with animation so good that it literally made me cry. Starting from here, the layouts were done by Juni. I love how the shock is still spreading to the floor, so it's vibrating a little bit. The smoke animation is cool. It's just a good amount of movement in general. My favorite cut is still this one. Yeah, that's just goofy. I love the way Sukuna is drawn in this episode. It's either goofy as shit or incredibly badass, and no in between. And Sukuna used reversed curse energy to heal Megumi. And yeah, the layouts here are still Juni. I don't really need to say layouts. I'm sure this did not make past the layout all that much, because when you actually see Mahoraga being corrected by a competent animation director, this is how it looks. The amount of shadow layers is the same, right? Here it's 1, 2, 3 different layers of shading. And the Russia drawing, it is 1, 2, 3 different layers of shading. It's not about the layers of shading, it's about the line art, the number of line work. I'm sure if I spent enough time, I could count the total number of lines being used here. But for this drawing, it would take me a lot more time, because the sheer quantity of line work here is excellent. I'm not even just talking about the small subtle line work. I'm also talking in relation to the shadows, because all of these shadows are defined by lines. This is a line that's going through here, and it's way more complicated, way more organic compared to just drawing line here, shoulder defined. Whereas here you have line going like this with another line going like this to define light over here, but shadow in this area and shadow in the chest area as well. It's just simply far more complicated. It's also, of course, just fundamentally different. Mahoraga's head shape, it's more like a triangular shape here, whereas his regular head shape is an oval, and the wings sprouting from his face are drawn completely differently. I love the Sukuna drawing. I'm assuming this could be Kazutaka Sugiyama corrections, but I mean, it's anybody's guess. And that's end of part A, 6 minutes into the episode, because they just wanted to put everything together. That's the action segment in this episode. Starting from here, when Mahoraga draws the sword, it's all animated by Shoichi. So Shoichi is one of the animators alongside Riku, aka Lighton, and Tento10, who were brought into Studio Mappa as part of the Ryu Nakayama animation project. They animated a lot in the ending sequences of Chainsaw Man. So Shoichi's strength lies in her incredible draftsmanship. She's an extremely good artist. For Jujutsu Kaisen, she animated in ED2. The Yuji walk cycle and all the character acting just has so much charm to it. She was also an animation director for Takeo Ninima's segment from episode 14. And while obviously heavily supervised by Takeo Ninima, that does not undersell Shoichi's talent whatsoever. This looks fucking incredible. This is like the modern Mona Lisa. Even over here, the artwork looks great. It has heavy amount of second key animator input, but also the layout must be heavily polished for it to look so good. The camera movement here makes it so obvious that it's storyboarded by Miso, by the way, like starting off from this foot to then just move to that foot. Where is the movement going to happen? Right here. The blade is starting to glow. So you move the camera starting from the bottom to the blade and bring the viewer's focus onto the blade by physically moving the camera up. For more examples of how Miso storyboards, just watch my previous episode's breakdown. I talk about Miso's storyboard techniques extensively over there. But the idea is that the shot follows the movement. It's sometimes placed where the movement is going to happen, but usually it starts from the area where the movement is happening and follows the movement accordingly. Over here, the most simple example, it starts from the top, and since the blade is going down, follows the blade. This is a Soto Yamazaki correction though, and to just see how versatile Soto Yamazaki is, just look at this one episode. Love the way Dismantle, I think it's called, I'm not gonna call it by the name of the official translation. The unofficial translation just sounds so much cooler. Again, look at this. The shot is placed in the center, but Sukuna then comes down, and then the camera follows Sukuna. It could have started at the bottom, right? It could have started here, and Sukuna would come down to the shot normally, but instead Miso chose to place the camera slightly above and then put it down as Sukuna comes down. Another perfect example, Mahoraga is going to crash over here. So you could place the camera over that side. You could have this shot starting from here and this entire portion placed in the shot, but instead move the camera with Mahoraga to take him into the shot. Same here again, starting over here, you see Sukuna go through your screen. He's outside of the frame now, but then the camera follows him and shows you the crash site. It is absolutely classic miso storyboards. Sukuna comes out with popcorn and soda. Again, a lot of really cool character acting here, and well, Sukuna popcorn will always be appreciated. Just look at that face. It's so goofy. I love it. Jujutsu Kaisen really has no unlikable characters. Even Mahito, I would say, is very likable. I just love how good he is as a villain. There's no unlikable characters except, of course, the Twink. He's the most unlikable character ever, but every other character has like a lot of charisma, especially freaking Sukuna. He gives me heavy Gilgamesh vibes. Just casually slices him up. Also, I'm assuming Sukuna is still using dismantle over here instead of cleave, because dismantle is used on objects that don't have cursed energy, and right now Mahoraga does not have cursed energy. It's later when they are floating in the air fighting amongst the broken train parts where Sukuna first senses cursed energy within Mahoraga. Yeah, I love the popcorn smears, and I also love the way Mito is just transferring all that popcorn momentum into the next shot. It is so cool, such a cool idea. All of this, by the way, animated by Sota Shigetsugu. This is one of the highlight sequences of this episode as a whole. It's also one of the most visually complete scenes in this entire episode, animation-wise. It looks beautiful. Love the shockwave here. It's just so Utapon inspired. Hone Hone takes massive inspiration from Utapon. Gosh, these perspective drawings are just so beautiful. Look at that. It's amazing. Again, following the motion with some simple background animation as well. Fist crashes down, a lot of rubble animation, and Sukuna just backflips through that. I love this cut so much. Sukuna is just flipping backwards up a building, and Mahoraga is just swimming through concrete in a butterfly stroke. All of this is still storyboarded by Miso. I'm sure Hone Hone could make adjustments to the storyboards because he's a high-level action animator, but these particular ideas, that is the Sukuna backflip and Mahoraga doing the butterfly stroke through the concrete, are confirmed to be Miso's ideas. This again looks so cool. I actually feel like this is a reference to One Punch Man. Again, Utapon's cut, but that could just be because Hone Hone's timing is similar to Utapon, and it's just both double fisting anyway, so it looks similar, that's all. Giving us a sense of surrounding and scale with this cut right here, we can process how big buildings are. With that respect, we can tell how big the explosion is and how big the damage is. Cool first person shot, Sukuna comes to the frame, and then boom, the kick. The kick has so much weight behind it. So it's not that it has a lot of build up, it's just that the release is so satisfying. The way it eases out of the kick, like boom, and then it eases out, slows down, hold it a little bit. And the way Sukuna is drawn here with heavy shadows on his face is a recurring thing in this episode. A lot of different animators draw Sukuna in this very specific way, with a lot of heavy shadows to define Sukuna's volume, but also specifically black shadows on his face to make him look more sinister. Dismantle here again, pieces up his hands. Love the build up here and then the release. Gosh, look at the background animation here. Look at the little details. Like this is a rooftop with a small table and foldable chairs, and Sukuna just crashes through all of that. These are real buildings that I'm sure the team scouted how the interior looks to make sure it's as faithful as possible. Talking about that, look at this background art here. I don't even think you can call that background art. That's just a filtered low resolution photograph, man. Crash through another building. This cut is not Hone Hone, by the way. This is by Tepe Okuda, who was the director of episode 9, storyboarded by Goso. And this cut is by an unknown artist. I just like how funny this is. Mahoraga comes crashing in, takes him down through the building. This looks very sus out of context. Rule 34 artists, please don't. Sukuna kicks him up through the building. So Hone Hone actually had mentioned that this specific building also exists in Shibuya. However, he could not get the reference of how the interior of this building looks. So instead, he used the interior of Mappa's production office as example. So this is Sukuna and Mahoraga crashing through the Mappa office. The funny shit is that this is Kazuto Arai's chair, and this is probably Takumi Sunakahara's chair then, because I'm assuming Arai and Sunakahara would sit together while they work. And yeah, they just crashed through that chair. Poor Arai, man. Man needs a break. And he wasn't even invited to the end of the year party. It's just so sad for him. You also see the Pochita plushie flying around. Maybe it's from Kaito Tomioka's desk, but I'm assuming more people have Pochita plushies in the Mappa office. And I also get to see a couple of water bottles. That's good. The staff is keeping themselves hydrated at the very least. Ends with a punch to screen from both sides. And that is the end of Hone Hone segment. Extremely cool animation, amazing background animation as well. From the very beginning, Hone Hone was Utapon inspired, and being a Utapon inspired animator pretty much means means that you need an amazing grasp over background animation, and also because he's surrounding himself with peers who have impeccable background animation. And funnily enough, Honehone and Vincent Chansard do have the most polished sequences in this episode. This cut then transitions to this cut. The production material for this particular drawing, at the very least, shows that this is a Kosuke Kato drawing, and I'm sure that this is as well, right? Yeah, this pose looks very Kato inspired. The animation in itself, I doubt it's Kato. This single cut is by Dorian Koldon. It's heavily modified in the second K phase, but honestly, the second K animator did an incredible job, including introducing their own ideas. There were some ideas removed, like Dorian Koldon's space impact frames, but I like the idea that they introduced here, which is Sukuna blocking the fist attacks with an open palm, but then he blocks the blade with his finger. That's very cool. Don't know who animated this rush. Looks pretty damn cool though. The cuts here are animated by Aditya. So the building is being pieced up, right? This is again Miso storyboards being so fucking perfect. You start to see the background slowly moving, and that's because the building is getting sliced in so many areas, it's starting to fall apart, and that comes together perfectly in this cut by Jijio Shao. Did I pronounce that correctly? I don't know. If there are any Chinese speaking individuals in the comment section, please let me know. So in Zhao's cut, the flurry of attacks are still being thrown, lots of beautiful smears there, but then the building starts moving and it's almost like they're in an anti-gravity field with the rubble just randomly starting to float. The building comes crashing down, complete lack of in-betweening in the building, but I mean, what can you do? Beautiful animation with the building and the destruction by Aditya though. Cut here is being done by Juni again, and it shows the same type of Sukuna drawing with his face being blocked by shadows. In this case, Juni went a step ahead, gave him red eyes to make him look even more menacing, but I wish this drawing did not have motion blur, man. Throws him across. The shot again confirms pretty much that it's still Miso doing the storyboards. This one cut of Sukuna is again being done by Teppei Okuda. Really cool drawing there. Now we have this car throwing scene. This is done by Teiyadam. I remember Teiyadam from Tucked Up Destiny, where he worked alongside Yen. I just love how the car is drawn like it has absolutely no weight. And that gives you an idea of just how fucking strong Mahoruga is, that he's just crumpling and lifting a car the way I'm lifting a towel. And it's not just one car, of course, he's just throwing a flurry of cars. All of these being hand animated by Teiyadam, that's actually fucking crazy. That is so insane. I think that's a Supra. I've played enough racing games to know my Toyota Supras. That might be a Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 10, and that is obviously a Mazda. Okay, so it is looped. I see the same cars again. It's just looped twice. That's still a ridiculous number of cars to draw. This cut corrected heavily compared to Teiyadam's Elo. I don't know if that's a correction thing or a second key animation thing, but this looks fucking beautiful the way Sukuna is drawn here. Menacing as fuck. Again, just look at the details here. He cuts the van in half and you see the individual seats. It's not evenly sliced here, but when it tumbles apart, wow, look at that detail. He must have used so many references to understand the cross section of a fucking vehicle for this one cut. That is genuinely ridiculous work. It's so good. I don't exactly know what Sukuna is doing here. He just kicks and all the cars just go back. Kinda looks weird, but I mean, I'm okay with that. It's such an insane sequence of animation. So I think Sukuna just uses technique here actually. Use a slicing technique with his foot there, which caused the slice here and the slice on Mahoruga as well. That he just casually puts himself back together. Tis but a scratch. Black screen here. I don't think that's intentional. I think there was a cut supposed to be there, or maybe it's just that they were just left in with a gap in the animation that they couldn't fix. So they just put a black screen there. The music is very good there though. It makes it feel like it's intentional because the music stops there and it's a new track that starts playing from here. This Mahoruga drawing, completely broken. I don't even know if Mahoruga has a character design sheet. Maho only really appears for one episode, so I wouldn't really be surprised if Sakuga did not even make a character design sheet for Mahoruga. I don't exactly know what those red particles are over there. Probably some unfinished ideas there. Inumaki here and some character acting segments here again. This is again animated by the same animator who did the Megumi rotation scene, being Shun Miyakawa. And yes, cars just fall from the sky, and I don't really understand what the idea is here. Like, are those buildings supposed to be falling? They're not floating, of course. Neither of these characters have the technique to do that. Like, they don't have infinity. So I'm assuming it's just supposed to show buildings that are so far high in the air that it looks like it's floating when they're actually just falling down. More than likely, it was supposed to be something completely different, unfinished, so they just did this instead. This cut though, really cool. Love the Utapon inspired cubic debris animation here. Of course, the cubic debris are literally fucking buildings. Then we do get like small debris as well over here. But this entire scene, heavily inspired by Yutaka Nakamura. Makes sense, there are so many Utapon inspired animators here. I'm assuming this could be like Toru Iwasawa maybe. But then again, I doubt Iwasawa would do something so fucking complex when he's so busy with Freiren. Yeah, that's just way too many buildings to draw. Sukuna is being used as the light source here. So whenever Sukuna is going past here, this single line of shadow is also moving accordingly. A very classic Utapon technique. Sukuna crashes through the building. We introduced tension into the scene by showing all the civilians. Mahoraga also crashes through the building, but here the cut, yeah, this is just a completely broken cut because the sense of scale is just non-existent. Just look at this lady here and look at this Sukuna here. Like, is that lady a giant? That is just the art direction and compositing completely failing the animation over here. Most likely because this was done like an hour before the episode was set to air. The scale with the animation layering here just makes no sense. Sukuna does his attack. It's heavily dimmed and ghosted. The dimming does not match what the ghosting does. Honestly, it looks more like Vincent Chansard's impact frames than anything. Vincent is not credited for this cut, so I don't think it's him. Love the smoke animation here. Whose smoke does this remind me of? I think I'm being reminded of Tatsuya Yoshihara's smoke animation from this, but again, Yoshihara is not credited either. Love the weight in this cut. Man, every single slice, every single motion that Mahoraga makes. So after that sort of weightless-esque animation with the character just floating into the building, now we get extremely weighty piece of animation. And look at the background animation. Look at the floor. That is so freaking complex. Yeah, so much detail with the rubble. It's uneven rubble as well. It's not like perfectly defined shapes or like cubic debris or anything. This is rough organic shapes. So moving organic shapes through frames, it's very difficult to do. And they also move accordingly to the swipe, right? Yeah, it's the same rubble that's being lifted up. This cut is just so stylish. So I think Sukuna dodges it first, but then Mahoraga adjusts or adapts, I should say, and slices downwards. But then Sukuna grabs it with a mouth that comes out of his neck. A very cool idea. The mouth has an unfortunate amount of melting. That could be attributed to how Sukuna's powers work, right? It does not need to be consistent on where the mouth is. I know I'm coping. It is actually just straight up melting, but it's cool. Mahoraga gets kicked upwards. The black energy to showcase Sukuna's technique. Completely lineless drawing here. The consistency, unfortunately, completely breaks down here. So they're coming from underneath the floor here, but in the next cut, they're coming from the side of the building. Okay, so that's looped animation. That's the first time I'm noticing that. So this is played in reverse. Sukuna goes back inside, and then Sukuna comes out with the same drawings. So yeah, I'm actually noticing that for the first time right now. A lot of hand-drawn stuff here. Again, water bottles, broken shells. Great work by the animator, whoever did the scene. I do not understand what's happening here though. Mahoraga vomits out bubbles for some reason. There are floating bubbles everywhere, but I don't know why. So Mahoraga is adapting to something. I just don't know what he's adapting to. I love the Sukuna drawings here. You can't see his eyes properly, but you can see it for one frame here. Yeah, that one frame looks really nice. Sukuna uses dismantle again, but all of this is still like very rough. There's very little in betweening and the drawings have very little consistency. Sukuna gets punched, I'm assuming, and then the way he's just T-posting on the rubble and getting pushed away, it just looks awkward because there's no sense of direction, honestly. The rubble feels like it's coming from the left side, but then Sukuna is actually going in the right side here. What the scene is trying to look like is, again, Yutaka Nakamura's scene from Full Metal Alchemist movie. So that's Sukuna going whoosh past the screen, that piece of cube that has Sukuna. Maho just flies behind him because I guess Maho can fly now. I'm assuming this electricity stuff flying over here is once Sukuna and Maho come in contact again, so that's them fighting. And Sukuna just walks on top of air here, like what is he stepping on? But hey, that's just the compositing breaking down completely as well. Love this cut. This is inspired by one of my favorite cuts in Naruto, animated by Norio Matsumoto. That ends with Sukuna kicking Mahoraga into the crane and the crane falling down. It's not part of the animation, it's just crane.png being dragged down. Maho comes in here, he's just stupidly fast. I don't know how Sukuna trapped him with all those wires. Love the ideas behind these cuts, but the art direction again completely breaks down. That's groups of cars .png being dragged in the background, and again building.png being dragged as well. Making a spear out of his curse technique and throwing it, that is such a cool idea. He just javelin throws a slice and the throw slices up buildings with a lot of background animation. No consistency between these two cuts, however. Sukuna's on the ground now. He was in the air doing the javelin throw of the slice, but now we're on the ground again. So honestly, this cut was completely unnecessary of Sukuna throwing the slice. If we could have cut from the buildings falling down directly to this cut, it would be more consistent. But well, the original idea was most likely something else entirely. How dynamic these cuts are, again completely unfinished, but it's still very cool. He turns the train into like an aluminium foil, and that is his curse technique again. That's the spiral cuts that he used to turn the train into a spring. And the single first person cut was drawn by Sang-Yoon Song. I'm assuming they are a Korean animator, and my Korean pronunciation probably sucked just as much as my Mandarin pronunciation, so I'm sorry about that as well. Some extremely gorgeous effects animation here. Love the cross flare, and yeah, this is animated by Harume Yamazaki. Look at the sheer quantity of stuff that she's animated on screen. There's a cross flare of light here that represents Mahoraga's position, and that transitions seamlessly to the cut of Mahoraga holding up a train. Love this cut. Wonderful character acting on Sukuna, and his mouth is just not drawn, so that's an artistic choice. The drawings here are mostly fully completed by Harume Yamazaki. Wonderful artist. And of course, this is all storyboarded and directed by her as well. A terrible environment for a first-time storyboard and direction artist, but she's still pulling off pretty damn impressive work, very ambitious work. This part is animated by someone else. I don't know who they are because artists unknown. And this is probably the most amount of melting I've ever seen with background animation. Everything here melts and completely lacks consistency. Just look at this handle over here, right? It's starting from here and going to here. So that's not how a handle is supposed to be. But then randomly in one of these frames, yeah, here the handle is correctly drawn. But then the way it's drawn changes and then it just fucking disappears and then reappears again. And I'm just pointing out one element in the background. Literally everything else is also drawn in a very inconsistent way. The effects animation here are very cool. Looks very similar to Harumi's effects again, so could still be Harumi Yamazaki's animation. And Mahoraga just crumples the building. The size is now just completely different. That's another thing that Mahoraga completely lacks in terms of consistency is size. So compared to how we started off, compare that to this. And the size difference is insane. That is actually a running joke that the staff had as well. Miso talked about it. They had a funny catchphrase that came up very often that is just Makora big. The throw here feels, it's supposed to feel very powerful, but there's no strong emphasis on build up and release here, unfortunately, so it does not feel very powerful. The train crashes onto a building here and I don't understand why the background completely changes in color. I don't know what the artist is trying to do here. I'm assuming just trying to create contrast in some way, but it doesn't really work. Now coming to this scene, another one of my favorite sequences from this episode. It starts off with Work Creek's animation. So Work Creek just helped out a little bit with a few cuts of animation and he did it last minute so he couldn't polish his drawings to a great extent, but they still look goddamn great because Work Creek is of course insanely talented. He's unnaturally talented, I would say. Maybe he was born talented. That is of course just me coping because I don't want to believe that hard work is the only difference between someone like me and him. Great use of smoke effects there. Sukuna flips backwards and goddamn, look at this cut. Another instance of that idea being used where Sukuna's face is just pretty much black. All the highlights are just deep black colors. Like, just look at the style for this. Then there's no way he can use perfect reference for this, right? There's no perfect reference for the moves that Sukuna is doing in this specific angle. So you could use gymnastic references and such, but you won't get it from this specific angle. So that's mostly Work Creek just eyeballing the movements, thinking of how it would look in his head, and then just translating it into animation, which is an extremely difficult thing to do, and anyone who practiced art would know that. Love the perspective in this one cut specifically, man, that's so good. That is phenomenal. Also love how the smile appears on Sukuna here, look at that. Slices everything up, slice travels along the side and probably vertically as well because it cuts the building in half. It's a bit of a layering error in the final product. In Work Creek's layout, it looks like the building is getting sliced half vertically and it's breaking apart on the outside. In the final product, however, it looks like the building is breaking and falling inside. So this portion in the background makes no sense when this is falling inwards because that is the portion that this is supposed to be. So it's supposed to fall outside, but because of a layering error, it does not look like that anymore. And these are all the people who should be falling because half of it is gone now. But it makes little sense because they are falling inwards now from the context of the scene in the final product. Lots of incredible debris animation here and spiky effects animation. Work Creek has switched to using more spiky Utapon inspired effects. We saw that from his smoke effects in the Chainsaw Man opening as well. But yeah, the idea behind these cuts is just ridiculous. Love this artwork here, love the character acting on Sukuna and all the debris just flying in front of his face. Whoever did the second KA for this, immaculate work. While everything in front of the Sukuna layer, that's the debris, the blood effects, is all by Work Creek. In his layout, Sukuna himself is just one drawing and it's one largely unfinished drawing. So the second key animation pretty much converted that into a full piece of character acting animation on Sukuna, which is insane work. That cuts to still images of the background twice. I doubt it's artistic intent behind these cuts, and these cuts are of course also largely disconnected in the way they are because now we're transitioning into Valen Zhang's sequence. I don't exactly know if this is a Valen cut, but from the energy of this cut, it's clearly a Valen cut. Again, I said that this sequence is one of my favorite sequences from this episode, and that's the reason. It starts with Work Creek and then transitions to Valen, two extraordinary young artists. Valen is of course another very young artist who is again insanely talented, a bit unfairly talented in fact. Of course, I'm just coping because I don't want to admit that the only difference between me and him as an artist is that he's put in way more effort than me. Just look at the energy of this cut, the hand animation, the perspective on that hand, flawless. Just look at this move, just look at this move, it's so cool. And finally ending with this is so insane, just showing the background as well, right? The buildings breaking apart, so cool. Of course, there's no consistency between this and the cut that came before because here Mahoraga is pretty much right in front of Sukuna, but now Sukuna does this move, you see the slices, and then Mahoraga is coming from behind the building again, though he was right in front of Sukuna. Kind of makes no sense, but hey, let's just enjoy the beautiful animation, eh? The animation is just so freaking chaotic. Look at the way the slices are drawn. Even that is not given a simple perspective. Even that is not just simple impact frames or something. The cuts look three-dimensional. It's so cool. Mahoruga just gets sliced apart in multiple areas. That's his head and 2 of his arms getting sliced off. Yeah, he's beheaded. All of his limbs are gone. Mahoruga is literally just a torso here. And his torso comes towards the screen. That same energy is transferred into his arm that's moving towards Sukuna, and he just swats it away. This is the coolest piece of animation in this episode for sure. And checks out Wei Lin Zhang. Wei Lin Zhang's animation is also largely unfinished. Not in the sense that these cuts look unfinished. It looks like Wei Lin Zhang put his heart and soul into these, but Wei Lin's sequence was originally supposed to be longer than this. Wei Lin's cuts were supposed to have a 3-point fisheye effect and then a side profile combat scene. And I'm very sad that we missed out on that because Wei Lin is incredible at side profile combat scenes. With this episode, we are simultaneously being blessed and robbed. So yeah, because Wei Lin's cut was unfinished, as I already said in my intro sequence, yeah, they just used Vincent's sequence there, and that's absolutely not artistic intent to use Vincent's sequence after Wei Lin's sequence because there's zero consistency between the two. Sukuna is clearly floating in midair here, and as we've seen from the production materials, Vincent's cut, it was a CQC cut where they were ground level. So Vincent's cut is literally just being used as filler to just somehow join one cut to the next, and the editing team did a pretty decent job to hide the inconsistency errors to the average eye, but yeah, it still exists. This cut again, it kind of makes no sense to just use a still frame with light streaks and then just show the impact there. I don't really understand what this cut is trying to do here. Maybe it's like a Predator reference, and of course Mahoruga is supposed to throw a building. You don't have the content to transition to Mahoruga throwing a building, so you just fade to back and then you show the building that he's about to throw that is slowly tilting on its side, then fade to black again, and then you get to Vincent's cut of Mahoruga actually throwing that building. Again, just no consistency between the shots, but let's just appreciate Vincent's animation here. Once again, classic Vincent fashion, everything here is animated by him. The sky, the foliage, of course the building itself, and the light bubbles coming out of the building. It's a heavily distorted looking cut as well. Looks really cool. I don't exactly know what Maho is landing on. Maybe that's the foundation of the building. He just lands, everything pops up, and look at that. The inside of the building, the entire cross-sectional foundation of the building. He's hand drawing that. Genuinely ridiculous. Look at the perspective here as well. Man, look at the perspective on that. So cool. That's definitely a fisheye perspective. That's why his arm looks so warped and humongous from this angle. Vincent loves to flaunt his smears as well. He's a true animator in the sense that his scenes look extremely animated. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point, but I might have gotten across what I'm trying to say. To me, I would never confuse Vincent's animation with CGI in particular. No matter how polished and how consistent it may be, it still looks like 2D animation. It still looks very animated in a very exaggerated way, and that's why I love his animation so much. That's what gives his animation that appeal. Just look at these basic scribbles, wind scribbles beneath Mahoruga, and look at how he turned Mahoruga into a literal smear here. Another extremely cool perspective before the throw, and then the throw actually happens. Is that a giant clock? It is a giant clock, isn't it? Is that a clock tower? I'm assuming that is supposed to be a clock tower. So you get a giant clock kind of thing here. That's a clock hand, and that's the symbols as well. And Vincent drew that frame by frame. So yeah, I can't wait for the Blu-ray. This shot is the most Hakyugo storyboard that Hakyugo has ever Hakyugo'd. Like, this idea would literally only come out of his head. All the billboards showing Sukuna, so that we have two different perspectives on Sukuna. These two are pretty much the same. It's oozing with style. Sukuna is just sitting on top of a traffic light pole and then doing this. Such a cool shot. Of course, no need to show his face or his body for the matter, just covered in shadows. Make him look as menacing as possible. And he breaks the fourth wall here, or the third wall. I don't know which wall this is exactly, but he cuts through the screen. Crack. And that slices apart all the buildings as well. The camera shake working perfectly with the animation to break apart all the rubble. This cut, by the way, animated by Hiramatsu Shu. Hiramatsu Shu, one of the most impressive directors for short form content. The Fate Grand Order Memorial CM that he directed is just straight up one of the best things that I've ever seen in my life. But here he just joined Hakyugo and Co. to animate some gorgeous rubble effects that he excels at. He is excellent at effects animation. So here all the rubble falling down on top of the buses, crushing the buses, and just the sheer quantity of effects here is just ridiculous. Look at the timing there. It's just so satisfying. A lot of individual particles just breaking up. It's not blowing up or anything because it's small rubble that starts hitting first, and then the big stuff hits, and then it starts breaking apart. Again, love the camera shake here. Just the destruction is so well conveyed. It's occurring in steps. It's not like one nuke is being dropped at the place. It's more like thousands of grenades are being dropped at the place. That's why it just breaks apart so sequentially. It's very satisfying. This cut is by another animator who has a fetish for effects animation. It's Hayato Kurosaki. His output has been ridiculous this season. He just continues to impress. The smoke animation here is beautiful, but I particularly love his character acting animation on Sukuna here. Just look at that. The exaggerated anatomy honestly works for me here. Sukuna looks like Monkey here because his arms are too long, but it works for this one cut. And honestly, from the way his hair is drawn, he looks like Vash the Stampede. And I don't really understand how the airplane is exploding. I don't understand how Mahoruga got up there or or Sukuna gets up there. But it is interesting how both these cuts are animated by Hayato Kurosaki. So it was predetermined that this is how the shots will flow. So maybe the plane explosion was supposed to be decided beforehand, or maybe there's supposed to be a cut after Kurosaki's work and then Vincent's work, where it is shown how the plane is exploding. But as it stands currently, yeah, we have no idea how the plane explodes. Let's just appreciate the sheer quantity of effects on screen again. That is how many layers? I can't count the number of layers. There are too many. We also get to see some classic Hayato Kurosaki smoke effects here with the plane catches fire, explodes, boom. Yeah. Beautiful Hayato Kurosaki smoke. 3 different shading layers, but how he gives volume with those 3 layers, that's so appealing. And now we cut to Vincent's cut. Quite a complex shot. Already a lot of things to say about this shot. There's a freaking plane that he's drawing by hand. So that's an illustration that on its own would be very difficult to do. We saw a lot of cross sections in this episode, right? We saw a cross section of a car animated by Tatum. We saw the cross section of a building by Vincent. And now we have, it's not a cross section, but we do have a section being cut off from a plane. And we see the inner portions. We see the seats in the inside of an aircraft from both sides. It's been cut in 2 different locations, right? The plane has 3 different parts, and we see the seats from both the sides. This is not even the most complex piece of animation that he did. The next cut is more complicated than this one. So everything here is animated by him. The smoke, the plane, the background, which is pretty much just large clouds of dust and smoke. Mahoruga completely breaks model and just pinballs everywhere. It looks like Vincent is taking a lot of inspiration from Weilin Zhang's One Piece cut for his animation here. Because to the extent that Mahoruga is smeared here, not even Vincent has done that. Mahoruga is here, but his face is here. He's smeared across this entire distance and then catches up with that smear, pinballs through the inside of this building. That again, background animation by Vincent. The dimming and ghosting is atrocious here. In fact, I'm just gonna use his production materials to break down this cut. So one thing you'll notice right off the bat with the production materials is that this is Genga and it is animated in ones. Immediately a question will arise, and that is how Vincent was able to complete seemingly all of his Genga while animating the shit in ones in a production schedule that is literally depressing. When questions like that arise, you'll just get more and more confused because there's no answer to these questions except just Vincent is a god and he is one of the top animators that the industry has ever seen. He's already one of the all-time greatest animators. And the fact that he's so young means that he'll only go higher from here. Just look at the complexity of this layer of rubble going across his screen. This dark brown stuff. Just that looks so incredible. And the way Mahoruga is adapting to everything. Yeah, here he adapts to whatever is coming this way. Holds himself together. But then Sukuna just pops in with the wing of the airplane. The hit on Mahoruga is so hard that the engine gets ripped off from the wing. And the cloud mouth in the background is so cool. You barely can see Sukuna here. But he's made to look menacing because of the cloud mouth in the background. And yeah, this is the cut that I was talking about. This is the most technically impressive piece of animation in this episode. A very close second being Saucelot's cut. This is also one of the most technically impressive pieces of animation that I've ever seen. So again, in this schedule, doing his Genga in once, Vincent decided to animate, as you can already see, an entire city block. So he drew a city block and he made it move. Yeah, that's animated. All those skyscrapers and the small houses, the buildings. And yeah, we are following Mahoruga here. We know where he's gonna land because we watched the episode. He's gonna land into that pool that you see over here. Up until he reaches that point, everything in the background is animated. This is a school, I'm guessing. From the shape, it looks like a school. So this, I'm assuming, is the behind of the school because there's a track here. And there's a pool here as well. So this is background animation to a scale that I've never seen before. Words haven't been invented to describe how incredible Vincent is. He's just chansarding. So now we reach the destination, that is the pool. Again, my channel is not all about just being awed at incredible animation. It's also about trying to break it down. I'm trying to figure out how he would have spatial awareness to this extent. Maybe he's using like helicopter camera footage as reference or like drone camera footage as reference and then translating that into animation, because I can't figure out how he would do this. And once we do reach our destination, that is the pool, it does not get any simpler. He makes it harder for him because, as you can see from this point, it does not look like pen on paper animation now, does it? Because it isn't. It's watercolor and ColorX. He's animating here in once, as you can see. So he's animating with watercolor on once in the worst schedule that a high-profile episode has ever seen. I don't understand how that's possible. It does switch to twos here. The watercolor animation is not even in once. Unwatchable. Gets stabbed with the crane again. Just look at that watercolor. Oh, it's so beautiful. Just look at the separation between surface and bottom. This is animated by a pen on a drawing pad. This is watercolor. The stark contrast between the two. Completely killed by the ghosting and dimming in the actual episode, but just look at this. The sheer complexity. Unreal. That is without a doubt One of the best cuts of animation I have ever seen. The next cut, I don't exactly know who animated this. The key animation work is not bad, but the in-betweening is non-existent. Just look at the way his foot is moving here. Yeah, that's just way too choppy. No in-betweening whatsoever. The power cord comes down, so that causes a short circuit. Everything turns off here, the lights that is. I like this small attention to detail even. Like the buildings have light, but this building does not have light because this is a school. School lights would be off at this time. And then Mahoraga adapts again. So this cut I'm assuming is animated by Daniel Kim. He is credited for this sequence. So I'm assuming this is the cut that he animated because of hands, as he's proved multiple times. He's very good with subtle referenced hand footage animation, just the subtle motions in the hands and the way it's wobbling because of the refraction of light, because we are still underwater. That's really cool, the way the hands are wobbly. And yeah, Mahoraga has actually grown gills here, so he's able to breathe inside water. He uses a shockwave attack that was shown in Honehone's cut as well, but now underwater, because he's able to breathe underwater, forms a suction effect and then explodes everything. Look at the sheer quantity of effects on screen. That is crazy. And animated by Hayato Kurosaki again, no surprise. This cut, I don't know who did this, but it's very cool. I love the movement on Sukune here. This cut is just flawless background animation. Again, no surprises as to who animated this. It is Hayate Nakamura. Hayate Nakamura is one of the key components of Mob Psycho Season 3's animation, where again he showcased absolutely flawless background animation. This cut is really cool. I don't know who did this, but it's again the same design philosophy on Sukuna, that is use shadows to hide his face. And once again back to Vincent, where he flexes his hand animation skills. Look at the perspective on that finger. Oh, the finger rotating across the screen. There's nothing that he's not flawless at. Just the most fluid hand animation there. The impact frames are completely broken. I'll just pull up the production materials for that again. Alright, here it is. Let's truly appreciate those impact frames. That's godlike. That is so beautiful. It's either low resolution in the production materials or dimmed and ghosted in the final version, so I would still prefer the low resolution ones. And then he just continuously chops up Mahoraga here. Apparently the Mahoraga drawings has a second key animator here. Vincent was somehow not able to complete most of his Genga. Even with a second key animator, you can see how the smears are identical to Vincent's smears. So he still did most of the animation here. So the layout is still pretty damn good if the final product looks absolutely like Vincent's animation. However, the consistency with how good Mahoraga looks in this cut, there's very good second key animation work here, and it's by Vincent Chansard's French friend. The second key animator is Lise Leger. My French pronunciation is probably just as bad as my Korean and Chinese pronunciation, so sorry about that as well. But overall, just another cool cut. Love the way Mahoraga is just flailing in the air here, trying to do something as he's being chopped into pieces. That is just really ambitious. It melts together a lot, of course. Attempting something like this is ridiculous in the schedule. Yeah, I mean, look at that melt. Another cut by Kosuke Kato where the background makes literally no sense. The animation here looks kind of nice. It's sweet. So all the cuts, they just disappear once the wheel rotates. So it's not like a proper healing mechanic. Like Mahoraga does not actually have a healing factor. It's just that he reverts back into the way he was by adapting. Don't know who did this drawing. If I had to guess, I would say that it's probably still Kosuke Kato, but I could be wrong. Another extremely ambitious cut. That is the shine coming from Mahoraga's wheel, I'm pretty sure. All those buildings just surrounding Sukuna. Insane. So great. This cut is by Kurilu, and it looks like it melts, but it's like very Ohira-like animation that Kurilu is doing here. It's very difficult to in-between, but even if there could be in-betweening errors or inconsistencies, that actually just works with the animation. Love the way Sukuna's hair is drawn, and also the shadows just constantly changing on his face. But of course, the highlight here, it's Kurilu, so it's going to be hand animation. Gosh, look at that. Look at the slow change in perspectives in the hands. That is just absolutely flawless. It's gorgeous hand animation. And that is so many frames to draw. It is entirely done in ones, I think. Alright, it's a mix of twos and ones. That is still so many frames to draw. It's so difficult to maintain consistency in a slow moving object, but this is an even more complicated object. These are hands. Hands are notoriously difficult to draw, just a single frame of them. And Kurilu is making so many drawings of hands here. It doesn't surprise me. She also animated this scene from Chainsaw Man. I love how menacing they were able to make Mahoraga look here. Lots and lots of detail here. But again, melts like crazy. Ooh. But again, it kind of works in the context of the scene because Mahoraga might be adapting to whatever's happening. I'm coping. Another Kurilu cut. Gosh, it's so stylish. It's so good. It's again where Hakugo shines as the director. You look at his notes that he left. So I have 3 examples to use to showcase Hakugo's episode director corrections. This will actually perfectly take you into the mind of Hakugo as a director. So the first example I have to show is with Kurilu's cut. This specific cut, that is. So looking in the ED correction, Hakugo has left the note hands and palm with no shadow for contrast. And as you can see, there's shadows on Sukuna's face, again to make him look as menacing as possible. Shadows on his collar, his clothes in general, but his palms, fingers, completely shadowless. You would expect this area to be in the shadows. The depth is defined by line work, yes, but there's no shading there, which, rightfully so, creates contrast. Contrast is appealing. You need contrast in cuts. The next cut is directly animated by Hakugo. I'm very sure I've seen enough Hakugo cuts to know when he's the one animating. Love this Megumi cut. So cool. The next cut again is animated by Hakugo, presumably a bit too much melting. I like the idea. Execution just couldn't keep up though. Here's where the execution does keep up though. Sukuna Ryoki Tenkai by Hironori Tanaka. We already saw Hironori Tanaka's depiction of Sukuna's domain in season 1. It was one of the highlights of season 1 as a whole, and now we get to see that again. Completely different style, and it looks so beautiful. This is a raw Hironori Tanaka artwork. My god, that looks so fucking gorgeous. It's so dirty in the best way possible. This is one of my favorite Hironori Tanaka cuts ever, because this is the rawest his artwork has ever been. Again, complete shadows for Sukuna's face here. A little bump in this area to show that he has a nose. Really fluid, flowy animation. It's like a mouth going through a barrier that just opens up, and then Sukuna is inside there, and then his shrine just forms. Or as Crunchyroll translations would say, kitchen forms. I'm just gonna stick with calling it Malevolent Shrine though. The sheer quantity of line work is just as expected out of Tanaka. Tanaka loves to flaunt his line work. There's no in-betweening here, I'm pretty sure. It's mostly just Tanaka's key animation, especially with the inconsistency between these two drawings. Yeah, just look at this pop. That requires in-betweening frames. The Doga man probably couldn't make extra in-betweening drawings for this. Just traced it and gave it to the coloring department. The skulls appearing as well, the liquid looks so beautiful. Some impact frames and then transition to this drawing. And as you can see, Makora big. Hakugo storyboards truly shine even without movement. Look at that. Look at the painting in the background. How does that compare to the people sitting in the foreground? How does that compare to the Megumi shot that you see here? That then cuts back and forth between Sukuna and Mahoraga. Always more to Hakugo storyboards than meets the eye. Everything in between is also really cool. It's tying everything up together, everything that's happened. So the subway train crashing through some building here probably happened from the fight of Mahoraga throwing trains around. Then we see the engine. This is the engine of the plane that fell from the sky. Sheer destruction caused by everything. Sukuna's domain just painted on the surroundings. This poor kid and all of these people, they don't know that they're literally placed on top of a chopping board right now. And Sukuna just turns Mahoraga back into his base particles. I don't actually like this because even the wheel is disappearing. I would assume if the wheel disappeared, Mahoraga would die, right? I wish the wheel would have stayed and Mahoraga would have disappeared. For those wondering, a scene like this does not exist in the manga, so just anime content. This cut from the shapes, it actually looks like Kaito Tomioka. Sharp, jagged streaks, absolutely Tomioka's animation. People dying, I don't know. They do mention Inumaki here. I don't know if he died or not, but I don't think they would off-screen him. So the sheer quantity of effects here is also going to be ridiculous because guess what? It's animated by Hayato Kurosaki again. The amount of work he's done for the season, has anyone kept up with him? Animation-wise, maybe there are a few artists who've kept up with Kurosaki, but he also directed an episode. So I don't think anyone has worked more than he has. It's just a matter of one artist being able to handle sleep deprivation better than the other one. That's what Jujutsu Kaisen's production comes down to. And I actually don't think that this cut is the blood flowing on top of her hands. This is literally her hand disintegrating at the molecular level. You can see that from the layering error on this hand over here. So you see how the hand is being engulfed, but then here the hand disappears. The blood disappears. Yeah, her hand turns into the phone case. And then of course the phone also disintegrates. Next cut. This is Saucelot's cut. I'm not going to use the anime version again. I'm just going to use the production material version, Saucelot's Genga that is. Alright, here we are. So right off the bat, what the hell am I looking at here? This is already the most dense piece of animation I've ever seen. It would be a fool's errand to even try to attempt counting all the number of layers here. I don't even think Saucelot knows how many layers of animation he's done here. Everything done in once. So not only is there like 100 different layers, literally every single component also moves in once. This is the most dense piece of animation I've ever seen. This is the most dense cut of animation I've ever seen. Unrivaled by even the top talents in the industry. I have never seen anything quite like it. I'm skipping individual frames here, by the way. I've always been skipping individual frames. You see that the gaps just going through Mahoraga. He's being sliced apart, but he's just reversing that and just walking forwards. I love the way the wings are drawn here as well. They didn't look like wires at this point. They're just flapping in the wind because of how heavy and fast the cuts are. And just the sheer swagger on Mahoraga, the character acting on Mahoraga is insane. I'd assume he animated a full Mahoraga at first so that he can get the anatomy of Mahoraga down. And then he animated the effects going through and tearing Mahoraga apart after that. At least I'm assuming that's how we animated this. This is the second instance of the Hakugo ED correction. Hakugo made reference shots of how he wants Mahoraga to walk forwards. face. And I'm guessing that was greatly helpful for Saucelot to get all that swag down on paper. So as I said earlier, no matter how fundamentally broken your episode is, if you get the industry's top artist to work on it, you get peaks of animation. That's what you get with this. That's also what you get from Vincent's animation in the next cut. Another one of my favorite cuts from this episode. In fact, I'm going to use this as a thumbnail because of how much I love it. Again, it's incredibly dense, not as dense as Saucelot's cut, but you're comparing it to the very best. This is still an insane level of stuff to draw. Again, everything done in ones in the background, all those slices, all those rubble animation, even the lights coming in. Sukuna's hair animation is done in twos. The sheer quantity of detail put into Sukuna's hair is exquisite. The character acting on Sukuna as well is amazing. Look at the face that Sukuna makes here. As a change in expression, noticing that this thing is still walking towards me. I gotta use even more power. That is again an idea that came from Hakyugo's direction. You can see from this Hakyugo reference shot that he's given to Vincent again, it says noticed in a speech bubble. That is exactly what Vincent's animating here. There's also other stuff he's written here like the wind blowing. So he's drawn Sukuna's clothes here in an incomplete fashion as if it's tearing apart because of how fast the wind is. And Vincent again conveyed that perfectly through his animation. There's also another just one word written by Go, and that's nuance. And nuance Vincent absolutely gave to the scene because this is some of the most nuanced bits of character acting and animation in general that I've seen. Gosh, this character acting is so good. The subtle expression changes. It reminds me of a Valiant sequence again from the Fate Camlet movie. God, this is exactly like that, in fact. Also storyboarded by Hakyugo. There's something about incredibly subtle character acting that is executed with this level of competency that just enchants me. So it goes from surprised expression to then like an excited expression. Sukuna's having to go all out here, so he's kind of excited because of that. So it's not just that Sukuna's pupils are getting smaller to show the noticed expression. He even drew that change in the small eyes on the sides of his face. Look at that. And when he makes the excited face, the pupils in the small eyes, they shrink. He's just adding the fire, I'm assuming, to his technique. Next cut, incredible rubble and explosion animation animated by Takumi Tsunakohara, I'm guessing. It looks very much like Hironori Tanaka. Tanaka is even tagged for this, but I don't think it's Tanaka. I think it's Tsunakohara. They both have this style of very little anticipation and build up and release when it comes to explosion and rubbles. Look at this Tanaka cut, for example. It flows so fluidly. But Takumi Tsunakohara also has a similar style. And with the effects, shape and everything here, it looks way more like Tsunakohara style than Tanaka style. And the next cut is absolutely, for sure, Takumi Tsunakohara, because you can see these pieces of rubble here that are just floating as a separate layer between everything that's exploding and such. So Tsunakohara has used the same technique in the past, easily visible from his Camelot scenes. So I do not think there's any Tanaka participation here. I think Tanaka just animated the Roiki Fenkai. I say just, but that is an incredible piece of animation and the most Tanaka could probably do in the schedule. But guess who's still going? Vincent. This is again done by Vincent. Love the subtle character acting here. Sukuna's body language is so well animated. The flame animation is great. All the cuts and slices, again, a very dense piece of animation. But when it comes to density, Takumi Tsunakohara is kind of unrivaled when he pulls off shit like this. Everything on screen is animated by him, by the way. The background, all the line work in the background, the smoke, all the pieces of buildings, the rubble here in the center, all by Tsunakohara. This is the most mob psycho pilled cut I've seen in Jujutsu Kaisen so far. It reminds me so much of Tsunakohara's sequence from season 2's Hakyugo episode. Or the rubble just flying in the air here. These are people outside the domain, right? They see what's happening. I don't think they would die. Another extremely cool piece of animation here. Extremely dense piece of animation. These light streaks look very much like the light streak that Vincent used. In fact, it looks identical. Is this again by Vincent? I just checked, and yes, this is also by Vincent. This is the last cut that he animated. I thought the last cut that he animated for this episode was the Sukuna cut. You can see that Mahoraga is superheating here, but yeah, everything just melts together at the same time. The backgrounds here do not look good. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about the animation. Everything melting together just looks so goddamn good. It's so sick. Gosh, it's so impressive. It's so impressive they pulled this off in the schedule. I can't stop saying that. Everything is hand-drawn here, and it's not done in the traditional hand-drawn way. It looks more like calligraphy style. I would assume this is Toshiki Sato, but Toshiki Sato is confirmed for the next two cuts, not this one. This is like the no line work style of animation that Tam Liu uses. Of course, there is line work. To define shapes, you need lines. I should say that there are no outlines. And yeah, here comes the fire. Gosh, that looks so gorgeous. Completely different style to Miso's Fuga from the previous episode. That was just pure volume and pure well-defined animation, with the Yamaso's correction thrown on top of that for good measure. This is just completely devoid of outlines. Everything is just colored red. He's smiling here as well, isn't he? Yeah, he's smiling here. It lacks in betweening, but then again, how would you in between something like this? It's just that the key animator could not have as many keyframes for this as I'm sure they would have liked more, because it looks a little bit choppy here. I don't know if that's intentional or not. I would assume not intentional. Now we get to see the Sato lava animation that I previously mentioned, heavily ghosted and dimmed. This portion specifically is just extremely dimmed, but you can still see the grainy lava animation that Sato has. Ending with this explosion, very reminiscent of the final explosion of the ending of the Apocrypha fight, particularly this segment. You see these pencil-like light streaks. In the end, they dissipate. Just the sharp yellow colored lines and red colored lines that come together. That is very similar to the final explosion of the Apocrypha fight. And we cut to Yuji, another So Yamazaki correction. Absolutely gorgeous. We also have a dolly zoom going on here. It's a very subtle dolly zoom. Sukuna tells him to fuck off and he fucks off, but dies in the process. I love it. A very satisfying cut, quite literally. And I love the way his eyes just roll up here. It's as if his eyes are obeying the law of gravity now. Because he can't control his eyes, they just move up because his entire face is moving down. It's not just his face, by the way. So the cut is going like this. You can see it going through his neck. So it's not like this. He's getting sliced like this. So his entire torso is being sliced in half. The tattoos disappear. And so does the smile. The subtleness with the character acting here with the hands shivering, so good. Here you can see that, yeah, he is actually sliced in half. That is the front half of his hand. That is the top half of his hand. It's just blacked out because of censorship. I'm assuming it might be red colored or actual cross section in the Blu-ray version. Again, this is just so good. The So Yamazaki corrections go so hard. The camera pan down here with Yuji tumbling down. Yuji is not even shown tumbling down. It's just the camera pans in a way that makes us think that Yuji just went on his knees very hard right now. And that obviously tells you this is again storyboarded by Miso. If I had to guess, it's mostly the work of So Yamazaki, not just with his corrections, but also with his animations, because he goes very hard with his corrections. It's not rare for him to just reanimate stuff with his corrections. Just amazing character acting work. It's just so painful. The music choice, I don't like it. I know that there's a low reason for that because the lyrics fit what's happening on screen, but that's not really an excuse of still using an upbeat-esque J-pop. It sounds a little bit darkish, yes, but it's ultimately a song that's made for an opening and it has those properties. It's not like any depressing music would work for this scene. If that was the case, would this music work? I'm dying inside, and all I see is demons. I would have liked it more with the same song if it started off with just the instrumental and then slowly the vocals came in. That would have been a lot more appealing to me because the vocals do work here. The song does work, just the beginning of the song doesn't work. It starts with "You are my special" when Yuji's having a fucking breakdown. The art direction here is not bad for last minute, but it feels fundamentally broken with the way these buildings interact with those surrounding ones. But then we just slowly go through all the destruction and it's just enticing to go through all of that. I wonder what the cover-up story is going to be for this. Maybe they just say it's the United States again and be done with it. So Yamazaki corrections, boom, it's like a jump scare with how good his corrections are. For this final portion here, we have the Nanami walk cycle. Nanami looks half dead and I'm assuming that he will be dying in the next episode. You might have noticed that the drawings look incredibly good here, and that's because these are Yosuke Yajima corrections. And that's it. Jujutsu Kaisen episode 17. A case of an unstoppable team of animators meeting an immovable schedule. What came out of it is the most chaotic episode I've ever seen in my life. And while there is enjoyment to be had here, I'm sure I would have enjoyed a much more complete version of this even more. I'm assuming the Blu-ray will make a lot of changes to this, but that would require the same artist to come back. I don't think that's going to happen. So it's just going to be corrections of whatever unfinished drawings that are here. I don't think there's going to be any completion process here. I don't think the fade to blacks are going to be replaced by actual animation. I don't think we're going to get the full version of Wei Lin Zhang's animation here. Wei Lin Zhang is a celebrity animator. He has no shortage of extremely high-level offers. So the idea of him coming back on a TV anime episode just so that he can complete the Blu-ray version, it's not gonna happen. Once all said and done, it is still truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I hope any future adventures that this staff list has, and any ambitious staff has for that matter, will be met with working conditions that facilitate the execution keeping up with that ambition. However, this being the anime industry, we are definitely gonna have more cases of lost potential. Still, I'm sure that we'll never have something like this ever again. If you like this video, leave a like. If you did not like this video, leave a dislike, subscribe and share, spread the love, and that's about it. Thanks for the views.